Hey guys, Rebel95, recording live from your Low County prison cell. Yeah, so this one's gonna be, just letting you know ahead of time, this one's gonna be a bit of a doozy for me. So this fight is, Neptune from Hyperdimensional Neptunia, and Alita from Alita Battle Angel. Both of these series have a lot of names of stuff that I'm not gonna remember, because a lot of them are hard to pronounce, or just like kind of nonsensical. So I'm gonna be really trying to describe everything without mentioning it by name. So that's gonna be a little hard. But I do think this fight is I love the thematics of this fight, because if you're not familiar with the origin stories, both these characters kind of have like a fallen angel sort of thing going on. Neptune being an actual goddess who was stripped of her powers, lost her memory, and sent crashing to Earth. Alita being a cyborg warrior or a robot warrior that the same thing happened to. She right. But the weird thing is that in hyperdimensional Neptunia, they're, theologically speaking, they're gods, but they're actually machines, right? They have like, they are composed of machine components, and they're you know and like they have, they're referred to as CPUs, but that's not like their actual thing. It's like, but they do have, like, they are made of technology, right? Whereas in Alita Battle Angel, the whole world is machinery, and is just like an allegory for, it's just an allusion to religious themes. So it's actually kind of cool how that works. But getting into it here. So yeah, like I said, Neptune is one of four goddesses of a realm, I believe, known as Celestia, and she's the purple one because she, not to break anyone's illusion, but the whole story of these games is basically just a giant tongue-in-cheek reference to the console wars. And she's actually named Neptune because she represents the I believe unreleased Sega console, the Sega Neptune, which was supposed to be the predecessor to the Sega Saturn. And she's kicked out by a black, a green, and a blue, I think. Goddesses representing Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. So it's supposed to be that she was kicked out of the console wars, pretty much. And yeah, and she got amnesia and forgot she was a goddess, and had to kind of fight her way back. Now, even in her normal human form, she's very strong. She's able to take down giant enemies and everything, because she's very good with a sword, actually. She has a lot of sword-based attacks that usually involve rapid striking the enemy multiple times. And she can even infuse her sword with elemental-based things, like fire, ice, earth, I think, even. And yeah, and then when the situation requires it, she can transform, or once she regained her goddess powers and her memory, she was able to transform into her goddess form, just Neptune, right? I think Neptunia is her human form name, and then Neptune is her, right? Or is it, whatever. And yeah, and then she gains a lot more of her power, which is, includes things like flight. She can turn herself into a fighter jet. She can, though I think, is that the thing where it says this is not happening in the description of the attack? I'm not even sure. Yeah, and she gains a sort of, in a way, a sort of like more spatial awareness. It's weird how they describe it. And as a goddess, she is also powered by what's known as share energy, which again is a reference to the amount of shares that were share energy, which is basically just an energy that's created by her followers praising her, right? And using the share energy, she can heal herself. She can I believe goddesses can even be resurrected if they're if there's like a large pool of share energy that's gathered by other goddesses and like transferred to them within a certain period of time. There's certain items that hold share energy. But yeah, and technically speaking, in her goddess form, the only way for her to die is if she were to run out of share energy, and she wouldn't really die, she would just kind of like cease to exist. Again, goddess in a theological sense. The only way that they were able to actually kill her or kill goddesses in their goddess form was to use a weapon that specifically siphoned this type of energy. But that's not even it there. There's also her, I believe it's called like, it's like Neptune.EXE or something, which is her like, which is considered the the form above a goddess, which is like, so it's like the next evolution of a goddess. And yeah, she, like everything, her stats go up, and she has access to a .exe attack, which is known as Dimension Slash. Now, here's where there's going to be some dispute. The attack is called Dimension Slash, right? And in the description, and the game's descriptions are not very good because it's the character themselves giving a description of the attack rather than like and it's sort of like them declaring an attack rather than really describing it. It says, I'll use .exe, Neptune says this, I'll use Neptune.exe to cut through even the concept of my enemy. I think it's just a regular slash that hits really hard because in the attack animation, we don't see any evidence, at least that I couldn't really find, unless I just wasn't paying attention, of any like dimensional tamperings. And as for the cutting through the concept of an opponent, I think that's probably like figurative, because you can survive this attack in game. It just does a lot of damage. So I'm pretty sure it's just a really hard sword attack. So sorry. But she does have her downsides. Like, for instance, after she uses Dimension Slash, she automatically reverts back to, I think she reverts back to her normal human form. And also, her goddess powers have a time limit. I believe they're called CPU powers, not goddess powers. But her CPU powers have a time limit. And if that time limit runs out, she reverts back to her normal human form, which is much weaker. And she needs, I believe there's like a time frame before she can transform back. Or it costs share energy or something along those lines. But yeah, very, very hard. It's a very hard series to power scale because everything is like technically literal due to it being like she is technically a goddess, like I said, in the theological sense, but she is also like an actual machine that, like, I guess predates but like she has like machine components. And I don't mean like Transformers where it's like, okay, this is the robot god who's essentially actually a god. I mean, like, she's a machine that serves the function of a god. And I guess that is the same thing technically, huh? I don't know. Well, point is, a god, not to get super, not to get super religious here, but, in a power scaling sense, a god can be anything. Like, you know, a god could be a guy that's slightly stronger than another guy. Like, that's, you know, what it, like, being god level power is not like a criteria, right? But that's neither here nor there. Moving on to Alita Battle Angel. So Alita is she's essentially like a robot soldier from Mars. And depending on which canon you're going in, there's a lot of like different, like, for instance, I think in the movie they talk about her being like fighting in a specific war, and then in the original manga run and then the OVA, it was kind of just like a symbolic thing, like, you know, she fell from heaven, heaven being this city of, you know, the rich that was literally being floating above the ground due to the moon's gravity. And she, you know, quite literally fell from heaven, thus making her the battle angel, because she, you know, she's like a fallen angel. And the idea is like, it's basically a giant allegory of Jacob's ladder, right? But yeah, she is she fell and lost her memory, and she was pretty much like one of the strongest, you know, in a world full of cyborgs and whatnot. She's pretty much one of the strongest, you know, around. And that was before any of this insane stuff that happens in the you know, Last Order and Mars Chronicles and everything happens after that, right? So Alita is like I said, a fully robotic girl with superhuman attributes, and she even had some like blade augmentations and whatnot. She has like a robotic exoskeleton that makes her like super durable. In her original form, instead of having water, her brain had like, she did have a human brain though, so I guess that technically makes her a cyborg. She had a human brain, but instead of water, it was held by resin that would harden to prevent her from feeling trauma. So she was like, to prevent head injury. So she was like super durable as well. Yeah, and after being destroyed a couple of times, she would end up getting replacements and augmentations to her body. Sometimes she could shoot you know, she could create blades. Sometimes I remember one point she had plasma that she could shoot from her fingertips. But pretty much all of that fell when she got what was known as the Imaginos body. Now there have been multiple points of this and different. It has been present in all canons. Like the original manga had an ending that was like the original ending, but then they created a sequel series, so it's considered like a FMA Brotherhood kind of situation. But the Imaginos body is in all of the series, and everything that happens in the original is still considered in etc. canon, right? But for the sake of things, I'm just gonna call it the Imaginos instead of Imaginos 2.0, Imaginos 2.1, etc., right? With this body, she was able to do like, I mean, it took the series from being like, you know, robots fighting to actual, like, it became like cosmic battle. Yeah, it's a nanotech armor, or it's like a nanobite armor that, you know, gives her complete control over changing her body, so she can like just create blades, or that plasma generation that she was able to use, because instead of a heart, she has a core reactor that can power the entirety of the city she fell in for years without slowing down. And yeah, she can kind of like use that to shoot plasma that's like 1,000,000 degrees. I think that was the actual number, was 1,000,000 degrees, or like 10 million degrees or something. And yeah, so she has pretty much anything she needs access to, including regeneration. Her body before, like I said, was super durable, but now like she can be blown into like pieces and just regenerate via willpower, right? As long as she's not completely, like, and instead of a brain, she now has, like, a brain trip that transferred her consciousness, so, she doesn't have to worry about, like, organic damage. So, yeah, and I mean, like, this is just scratching the surface. Like, for instance, her mastery of the Martian martial art, Martian as in, like, the people of Mars, not as in, like, aliens. I think it's Panzerkunst, I believe it was pronounced, where it's originally was meant to be a zero gravity martial art, but she's been able to utilize several techniques, including one where she basically vibrates herself at a frequency to bypass the person's skin and bone structure and attack their organs directly. And she's even been able to create a plasma version of this where instead of using vibration frequency, she can basically send plasma waves through your body, which is, again, this is like 10 million degree plasma that she can do this with. She can also form that plasma into, like, basically a lightsaber, like a plasma cutter that she can use with her hands. Her heart that I mentioned that, can power the city for years and years, she was able to overclock that to, like, move the trajectory of the moon so that it wouldn't crash into the ship she was in. She was able to, I think at one point she had something to do with, like, creating a black hole. Like, it's crazy what she's just able to do with these things. And it's like, and her strength, and that's before taking into consideration how this multiplies her stats, because she was already, like, probably the strongest cyborg that there was. And then this actually multiplied her stats to, like, in the upwards of, like, billions of times over. So she is, again, like, planetary, like, she's literally flying around in, like, space fighting, like it's like fucking Dragon Ball Z with her. I have to kind of use these descriptions because, again, I don't have access. There's not a lot of good ways to look up information on either of these series. But yeah, so getting into a fight here, this is really hard to gauge. Because, like I said, on one hand, Neptune is a goddess, and, like, if you consider, oh, well, well, again, what is a goddess? Like, what does that mean in terms of her actual power? So I kind of have to just take the information as I have it and say, well, Neptune can't really be killed in her goddess form or in her EXE form unless she runs out of share energy. And Alita wouldn't have a weapon that's capable of doing that like they did in Neptunia. So as long as she can stay in her goddess form, she should be technically invincible. That being said, Alita is maybe equally as invincible just due to being able to regenerate at will. And Neptune doesn't really, she just kind of fights with a sword, so it'd be kind of hard to actually, like, kill Alita for her unless she had some sort of hacks. I'm willing to say that I don't want to say one is definitively stronger than the other, because, again, these series both operate on really weird axes of, I almost said axes of power, which is a very different thing than what I meant. Very weird axes of scaling, let's say. And yeah, so I would say they're around each other's wheel park in sort of power, because if one of these characters is definitively, like, so much more powerful than the other that it's determinative, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to use the variables here to determine this one. So the only way that I think Neptune has a means to kill Alita, especially because I didn't even mention Alita's like access to a fucking giant supercomputer, or that can like predict the future, because it's a combination of like multiple human brains, like thousands of human brains. I didn't mention the fact that she's got like fucking magnetism powers, which against a machine opponent would probably be pretty big. The fact that she can like hack any computer system remotely and stuff, which again, a machine opponent's probably pretty big. But the only way that Neptune probably has that would be able to actually kill Alita would be if we consider the dimension slash to actually be a like dimension slash, like it's cutting through a dimension, because that's not something that her nanobites can really account for, or that Alita's nanobites can account for. Or if we take into consideration the cutting through the concept of an opponent to being like an ethereal kind of eraser attack, right? Then maybe you can consider that. But so that's going to be where I peel this from, because I think, given the fact that EXE only works like once and her goddess powers have a time limit, I think that really puts Neptune at a disadvantage otherwise. So that's how I'm going to look at it. I personally don't think Dimension Slash works that way, just based off of how I've seen it in the games. But yeah, if Neptune has access to Dimension Slash, I think she can probably kill Alita. She would kill Alita, I think. If not, then Alita would win this. But yeah, that's how I see this. Anyway, weird fight. But I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of Neptunia on Twitter for some reason, and yeah, I just figured this seemed like the fight that I would want to do for it. But anyway, Rebel on U95. See ya.